Hi, I'm Josie Cartdrige. Lovely to be here with you today. I'm the Global Marketing Director of the Outnet, which is a luxury brand for past seasons product. Having joined the Outnet back in 2019, I'm responsible for all the sales, marketing and creative, leading the Outnet's overall marketing strategy. My team are responsible for driving the global brand awareness, sales revenue, increasing acquisition and engagement, and retention through hopefully innovative marketing initiatives. And I'm here with you today to discuss how, from the perspective and an e-commerce brand like the Outnet, how imagery, video, and overall content can have an impact on our consumers. So when thinking about what makes for a successful marketing strategy and what's important to keep in mind when strategizing for an e-commerce brand specifically, I'm going to share some of the things that I think are important to keep in mind. So knowing your audience and their needs, I think is the number one priority. You need to be really clear who your consumer is and what it is that they desire, and how your brand can service those needs. Identifying what success looks like and establishing how you will measure this, whether that's via conversion, sales, social engagement, etc., is also key. I think within marketing, it can be quite easy to set off on a strategy or an idea without having a clear measurement framework in place. And I think from experience of understanding how you then explain what the successful marketing activity is, and often importantly, what the return on any budget spend is back to the rest of your colleagues, it's really important to know right from the beginning how you're going to set that KPI framework. Creating a strategy with a diverse approach and being kind of reactive and nimble where possible. So obviously we've all lived through a situation over the last kind of 2 years where kind of many tried and tested marketing messages were just no longer relevant based on how consumers' lives were impacted by the pandemic. And so I think it's just always good practice to stay agile and be able to reassess what's relevant for your consumer now, and have that as a kind of constant check. Aligning strategy across your marketing channels for a cohesive customer experience. So considering what is your consumer looking for across the kind of different marketing channels and different points of the customer experience, and then working out how do you deliver an idea in a relevant way across each of those touch points, so you have a kind of seamless experience. And then I would say last but not least, feedback is crucial. So listen to what your customers kind of tell you. And often we get great internal feedback as well, and particularly departments like customer care, who often end up dealing with all the issues. So it's great to take feedback from wherever you can get it. I think the most important element of a consumer's e-commerce journey is thinking about how you engage your audience by creating an experience that's inspiring, enticing, and importantly relevant, yet also really easy for them to kind of go through. So offering a really clear and transparent approach that hopefully then leads to kind of repeat orders and customer loyalty. I think often within marketing, you're trying to do that both inspirational piece, particularly within fashion marketing. So how is it that you want someone to feel when they put on a garment, or what do they want to imagine they might look like when they're on holiday in a garment, etc., etc. But at the same time, you also need to get to the point around, maybe how much does it cost? How easy is the shipping? What's the product detail in an image? So you're trying to balance inspiration also with information. So trying to make sure that you have a good balance there. And then hopefully leading to conversion and a kind of happy customer, which then should drive repeat customer behavior and establish that loyal customer base. So again, understanding through the feedback that you receive, what is it that drives loyalty? What do customers like about the experience? And then making sure that you kind of learn from that and build on that for next time. So we operate within a ever-changing environment, And we need to understand what's changing for our consumers, what are the different formats that they interact with, and really trying to create that close proximity with our audience through the e-commerce experience. So in my view, some of the ways that we do that is via kind of community creation across marketing channels. So that's both through kind of personalization, localization from a regional perspective, but then also that sense of community and a sense of belonging kind of through all of our kind of social, email, and kind of own channel communication. And then the development of strong content, allowing the brand to stand out. We operate within a very crowded marketplace, so we need to create imagery and messaging that kind of stands out within that space. And also brand content that tells your brand story clearly. So what do you want to be famous for? What do you want your consumer to remember about you against the rest of your competitor set? When scrolling through Instagram, it's very easy to skip over content, and also it's very easy for it all to merge together. So really think about the context within which your consumer is going to see your content. And then use different channels for different purposes with different content. So you'll know that a consumer is using Instagram for potentially inspiration, whereas they might be using email more for information. So be very clear about, why is your consumer interacting with that marketing channel, and what type of messaging is therefore most potentially most relevant for them in that space. Within e-commerce, we often have two different types of imagery. So editorial imagery or product photography that is there to sell an item once a consumer is on your website. In my view, those different types of imagery don't denote different consumer types. I always think of them as different areas that the consumer is interacting with, and they have different roles. So, for example, an editorial image, if a consumer is seeing that image, it either means that they're in your editorial section, or they're on your social media, or they're seeing something within an advertiser's environment. Therefore, they're potentially not exactly in shopping mode at that time. They're relaxing, browsing, and you are there to inspire them, and that's the role of that editorial type image. Whereas once a consumer is interacting with product photography, it normally means that they're on your site at the point of browsing, or they're looking at kind of carousel type advertising within Facebook, which means they're scrolling through a carousel of product. So at that point, the consumer has shown some intent that they are in shopping mode, and therefore the imagery should be more about clearly communicating product detail, fit, what is the fabric type, details around color, zippers, etc. And therefore the imagery needs to be much simpler, really well lit, so that the customer gets all the information that they need before they decide to make a purchase. So just to summarize for me, editorial versus kind of product imagery, both sets of imagery could be used to attract the same consumer, but you're using them at very different points in the consumer journey, and therefore need to consider at what point in the journey are you servicing an image, and therefore which type of imagery do you choose to give your consumer based on what they're doing. So there are a number of different innovative approaches out there in the market when thinking about e-commerce from a kind of content and imagery perspective. AI and obviously VR have been around for some time now. And I think that e-commerce retailers have done quite a lot of experimentation in this space. In my view, it's still quite nascent, and I imagine it's going to continue to keep on, developing at pace over time. So I still believe that we're very much kind of in the early phases of that. I really hope that there's some great tech that comes through for fashion, because I still think particularly augmented reality could have some great user cases around letting people try on clothes before they buy them, things like that. But I think at the moment, we've not really come up with a brilliant piece of tech that delivers that. I'm probably now going to get pitched that lots, but that's great, because I'm hoping there is some tech out there that does do it well. And within that, I think that there's quite a lot of big data providers now around fit analytics. So this allows us to suggest to customers what size they may be, and data providers do that by having huge kind of algorithms that record what customers buy across different brands, and therefore then can kind of learn what size in a different retailer might fit them. I think those are super helpful for the consumer, and anything that helps the consumer get their purchase right first time and something that fits them first is obviously good for the consumer, and it's great for us because it should lower returns rates. So I think the more that continues to develop, the better. And then personalization. I always think of personalization so it's both one-to-one personalization, which I still think obviously an experience like Netflix or Spotify is quite sophisticated in this space now. I think fashion still is very much in its infancy in this area. We do an amount of one-to-one personalization kind of based on your kind of past browsing and selling. So we might recommend certain things to you based on that, but it's still quite early stages. So it'll be really interesting to see how that continues to develop. And then we also run quite a lot of kind of customer segmentation personalization. So that's where we may bucket up a number of consumers who share some characteristics and serve them content that we believe is more relevant for them. And I think there's a lot of scope for that to kind of continue to develop as well. So it's an exciting time, I think, particularly within fashion e-commerce, to really think about the tech that's out there. How does it continue to develop to really service consumer and business needs better? So it's an exciting space. So when it comes to looking at different strategies and kind of technical functionality, things that we've seen have worked have been both within, as I was saying, how we offer up the right size to a consumer first. That is helping to improve conversion, and then also personalizing through our own channel content based on kind of past browsing and purchasing behavior. Again, for me, it just improves, when it's done well, it improves the relevancy of what the consumer is receiving. And therefore we then see that drive conversion, which then overall drives retention. So I think it is successful both in terms of giving the customer things that they like, and then obviously giving them a positive business benefit. So when thinking about all the new emerging mediums and channels that e-commerce brands now have to create a successful omnichannel approach, we're always aiming to deliver a seamless experience. And for me, I think that's the real crux of an omnichannel approach. So it's trying to have that kind of consistent customer journey, and also kind of always understanding what did your customers see before and what do you want them to see after. So thinking about the kind of the train of the messages, and to make sure that there is a kind of logical and joined up experience for the consumer, and importantly kind of reacts to their behavior, so that you can then keep tailoring the experience based on what it is you can see the customer is wanting to do. I would say that offering as much personalization as possible really helps drive that. So if you are improving the relevancy of your content and messaging based on what the customer has just done, you're much more likely to see repeat purchasing. And this may be as simple as kind of language. So that's the very obvious kind of personalization approach, is to have it in the right language and the right currency, through to more kind of specific messaging that you might run based on the purchase behavior. So if you can see your consumer always buys one particular product category, you may tailor messaging more deeply in regards to that product category. I think that there's a lot of testing and learning that's required in this area. So I would always say, don't be afraid of trying things and seeing what does and doesn't work, and that failure is good, because it can teach you something, and you can then learn how to move on. So I don't think it's often not always easy to get it right first time. So I would encourage quite a lot of test and learn in this space. And it's also really helpful to run multivariant testing here. So you may have 2 ideas or 3 ideas that you think could deliver the same goal. So kind of setting up control testing so that you can run 3 experiences in parallel and kind of see which one wins is also really helpful to continue on this journey. So technology has obviously changed all of our worlds, and the e-commerce world particularly. I think that it's a constant change, so it's always evolving, as we know. And I think consumers get impatient more and more quickly, and also just think that things are easy. So I don't know, because Uber can tell me exactly where my delivery driver is. Why can't I see my supermarket shopping, or whatever it is? So I think that we all have to be aware of how competitors react to technology, and how does that change a consumer's perception of your brand, and just always be aware that change is a constant. We've obviously seen a natural shift in higher demand for e-commerce, with kind of everyone having an amazing computer in their pockets all day long, and access to all, from a fashion perspective, all the brands in all over the world in their pocket at all times. So this has naturally led to kind of higher demand, and we certainly have seen a big shift into mobile and app shopping, as we've kind of gone through not just the pandemic, but the years prior, as mobile phone usage and smartphones kind of grew so significantly. Technology obviously allows us to kind of update our experience constantly, changing how consumers shop and pay and receive their purchasing. And we've spoken about personalization. So obviously it's technology that is empowering personalization, and the use of kind of big data within kind of all of our worlds means that kind of one-to-one experience that one might have only expected when going into a department store in the past, we can now all experience that in a different way through our phones, because the retailer knows it's you, or can know that it's you, and can tailor the experience accordingly. So it's an ever-changing space, and hopefully it's always improving the experience for the better for the consumer. Entering the next phase of the digital landscape, and the metaverse has now been defined, and there's a kind of a new direction that I expect e-commerce is taking. I think it'll be important, kind of the same things remain true, i.e. as in know who your consumer is and how are they interacting kind of with that space. I think for me that's the most important thing. I expect we'll see quite a lot of disruption in this space, and it's still incredibly early days around both kind of new technologies such as NFTs and cryptocurrency. Fashion and gaming has collided more over the last year in some successful ways. So it's very much a kind of a space to watch. I would have thought that for brands who see their consumers really engaging with this space, it will hold a huge amount of opportunity. And it's very much a white space, it's there to be kind of played in and defined. So it'll be exciting to see how it kind of continues to develop. I would also imagine for brands that successfully kind of find a way to engage, it will unlock new customers. So it's potentially a kind of acquisition opportunity once we've all got our heads around, what exactly it does and doesn't mean. But I'm sure, a bit of test and learn, and we'll figure out how to find our way. So over the next couple of years, I expect video will continue to really emerge as a new format. And the ability to really embed video seamlessly into the shopping journey. I expect we'll continue to see kind of more of that. Integrating engaging video content, particularly within kind of the shopping journey, I think is a space that will be really interesting. And we currently often tend to see video kind of separate to the shopping journey, like it often sits more in advertising and editorial. But I think it'll be interesting to see how it comes into more of the purchase experience as well. Live shopping, I think also will be an interesting space, particularly within social channels. I expect we'll see a kind of merging together of kind of video content with just being able to seamlessly click and shop whilst you're watching that video. I think it will be a good way to kind of further build and foster your brand community, particularly because I think within video you can often express so much personality that you can't necessarily deliver within a still environment. And as I said, I think AI will also enable some kind of try-on experience that will potentially come through video too. So my advice to e-commerce and marketing professionals and my kind of predictions for the future. So I guess given the recent circumstances that we've all lived through, and that we've really seen, we're well past the tipping point of into e-commerce in the luxury space that I work within. That's really helped kind of galvanize growth. And I think lots of kind of retail experiences that were traditionally thought of as being kind of store only have really kind of flipped now into e-commerce. I think it's an exciting time to really be operating at kind of full pelt, as it were, in this space. I think the e-commerce is, it's very well established and trusted. So I would say that for us as marketeers, it's kind of the world is our oyster. It's, you can kind of put out anything, you want pretty much now, and kind of look to see how that develops. And I think also through the pandemic, we've also really seen how we can pivot and adapt very successfully to customers' needs. You don't have to, go to the lengths of redoing your shop window or changing your store design or all these things that when I've worked in bricks and mortar retailers, to deliver change was hugely kind of costly and time consuming. Whereas within the e-commerce environment, you can put up a new picture, develop a new logo, and there you go, it's there. So it enables that agility. So I would say make most of the fact that you have the ability to change and grow and adapt. And obviously within that still maintain some kind of, brand consistency. So I'm not saying change so that you're going all over the place for your consumer, but just keep developing, stay relevant, and try to stay on top of all the tech opportunities, which is a job in and of itself. So I wish you all lots of luck in your marketing endeavors within e-commerce in the future.